Hi everyone, it's Kate from Mental Health Memoirs, and this week I'm releasing a video of my interview with a friend, Michelle. Michelle lives in Greenwood, South Carolina, and stays at home right now with her two kids. Our husbands worked at the same hospital in Greenwood, which is how we knew each other when we were both living there a few years ago. So look for more information in the description. In this video, we talk some about Michelle's experiences with obsessive compulsive disorder, depression, and anxiety. And at the beginning, we kind of jump right in talking about what Michelle's life has looked like since the pandemic. So I hope you guys like this video. Please comment, share if you find it helpful, and thank you for your time watching it.
Everything I ever wanted. Why am I still miserable?
How have things been there with Corona? Like, what does life look like for you with it?
So Greenwood hasn't really peaked yet. It's starting to go up because the governor opened us up towards the end of May. And so cases are starting to go back up again. So I'm curious to see how long until they like shut things back, if they're going to. I don't know if they will. And so for me personally, I'm taking the stay-at-home recommendation pretty seriously.
In the past, you talked a little bit about your experiences with like anxiety and depression. And I just wanted to hear more from you on kind of like what your history has been with that and just like what that's looked like for you in your life and what it looks like, I guess, now.
Yeah. So I started having anxiety really young. And it's like I can look back now and be like, yeah, that probably wasn't normal. Because like kids have anxiety, like kids get afraid of things, but just the level that to which I was afraid of certain things happening, it was just very extreme. When I was about 6, I became obsessed with the idea that my house was going to catch on fire. And I would sleep in the living room so I could watch the fire alarm light blink. And when I was maybe around like 8 or 9, I guess when social anxiety can kind of get started, you know, like you don't want to be like embarrassed in front of your friends, like around that age. I got very nervous. I could be at my best friend's house, you know, like basically my second family. And I would sit there and agonize for an hour before I could work up the courage to ask for something to drink because I didn't want to be embarrassed if they said no. But who would say no to that? You know, like,
When you play it out now, it sounds like, you know, you would think this, but at the time it like makes so much sense to you. Like,
yeah, like, I mean, it just wasn't worth the risk to be told, no, you can't have something to drink. I also remember when I was maybe around like 9 or 10 and I would spend the night at my grandma's house, I'd sleep in the bed with her and, you know, I'd wake up before she would. And it would like, the first thing I would think of is what if I roll over and she's dead? And like, it took me a long time to be able to like, okay, no, she's not dead. Like, I was just very preoccupied with like catastrophic loss. Like I said, the fire, my grandma dying, like my mom dying. I had this really weird goodbye ritual, which I was diagnosed with OCD as an adult. And so I can kind of like view some of these things through that lens, like knowing that I have that tendency now. My mom worked third shift and I had this insane goodbye ritual that we had to go through before she left because it wasn't that I thought she would die if we didn't do it, but it was more that like if she were to die on her way to work and we didn't say goodbye this way, then I would regret it for the rest of my life that I never told her goodbye. And I did that for probably like 3 years, like every night that she worked for 3 years. My depression, I guess, started when I was say like in 10th grade. And it was the kind of depression where you're functional, but you're miserable. Because my identity was really wrapped up in being successful and doing well in school and teacher approval. And so all of my anxiety kind of centered on like maintaining all of those things. And so that's why I was able to be functional, because it was connected, but it was, college was the first time I saw a therapist. I knew that I was probably depressed in high school, but I didn't want to tell my mom because I knew my mom was depressed and I didn't want to add anything else onto her. And so I didn't feel like I could talk to her about it because I didn't want her to blame herself for how I was feeling. But when I was in college, I made an appointment for the first time to see a therapist because I got an A on an English paper. And English is like, I love reading, but analyzing literature is just very difficult for me. And I just freaked out because she wrote on the paper like, oh, you've made great strides. I can't wait to see what you do next. And I was just like, I don't have anything else to give you. How can I make any more strides? I gave you everything that I could in this paper. Like, and I just like burst into tears. And I realized like, I'm crying because I got an A. I should talk to somebody about this. So they actually fit me in that day. If you call campus mental health services and you are like inconsolable, they tend to get you in pretty quick. And so I saw her off and on through college. She recommended that I try medication at the time. And I didn't feel comfortable doing it because I had, I knew several people that took medication, and granted, this was as teenagers, which biology and physiology in adolescence is different than as adults. And so that's probably why this happened a lot. But they would try medicine and they would just swing so far in the opposite direction. They just didn't care about anything. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I can't do that. I'm miserable, but I'm getting stuff done. I'm getting my class. Like I'm achieving my goal to be successful. I would rather be successful and miserable than numb and unsuccessful. And so I chose to not take medicine then, but she diagnosed me with dysthymia, which I guess now is called persistent depressive disorder, which is just low-grade chronic depression. I mean, I was literally depressed every day for 10 years. And then I went to graduate school out of fear because I was too afraid to try to get a job because I was afraid of failing. And everyone and their brother was just telling me to go to graduate school, so I did it. Graduate school is very different than college. And there's a lot of brokenness in academia that I was uncomfortable with. And so like academically I was doing great, I always do, but personally I just didn't fit in, and I had a very oppressive isn't the word that I want. I can't think of the word I want. I had a very bad case of imposter syndrome where I was just convinced that, I wasn't as smart as everyone believed me to be, and that anything I had ever done successfully was just a fluke, or it wasn't that hard to begin with and anybody could have done it. And that I was like one step away from everybody figuring out that I'm actually dumb and kicking me out. And so I was, it really kind of impeded my ability to do research there, because the questions I needed to ask, I couldn't get myself to ask because I didn't want to reveal that I'm stupid, if that makes sense. And so it was just a very bizarre experience, and God did me a solid and got me out of it without burning any bridges. Because I didn't want to just like walk up to my boss and be like, so I hate it here. See you later. Like, that's going to burn a bridge. So when Joey didn't get into med school, where I was doing graduate school, I took that as an opportunity to leave. And, people understood that. Like, I'm not married to science, I'm married to my husband. Mm-hmm. And he'd been doing Teach for America in Nashville when I was at Vanderbilt. And we really thought that he was going to get in there because we had, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? And we knew the right people. And it's other than God, like, closing that door. I don't have another reason to understand why he didn't get in. So then we moved for med school, and I was very depressed because, like, even though it was my choice to leave, I was just very confused about why. And I had everything I wanted or thought that I wanted when we were in Nashville. I was married. I was living in the nicest apartment that I had ever lived in. I had cuddly cats, and I was making friends, and I was in the graduate program I wanted to go to the most. And it's like I had everything I ever wanted. Why am I still miserable? And so for most of the time in Athens, the first 4 months, I was very lonely, didn't have any friends, didn't have a job yet. And I kind of started self-medicating my depression with nail polish. It sounds ridiculous to say it out loud, but I was addicted to buying nail polish. I would rationalize, well, like, some people spend $5 a day on coffee, and I'm just spending like $1 or $2 here on a bottle of nail polish, and I can use it more than once. Coffee, you only drink once. And but seriously, like, over a period of 2 years, I probably bought 500 bottles of nail polish. And there's a very long story that goes here, which I actually kind of discussed on a podcast recently. Decided we were ready to start having children. I was actually in a pretty good place emotionally. Just one day, I just woke up and felt normal. And there's a story to how that happened, but it was very random. It was a couple of days after New Year's, and I just woke up and I was like, I shoved Joey awake, and I was like, I feel normal. I feel like a human right now. It was just, I woke up and all of it was gone. So I had about a year and a half of feeling like a normal human being. But then we had a really hard year, which that's in the podcast too, if people want to have the details about that. And the end result of going through that year was I had a mental breakdown. And that was how I was diagnosed with OCD, which made my entire life make so much sense. Because one of the things Joey and I would kind of argue the most about in our marriage, because everyone's marriage has the thing that just always keeps coming back up, For us, that thing was, from Joey's perspective, with the smallest amount of stress, I would just snowball into this place of just despair and high scale anxiety. And he would just tell me happiness is a choice. You can just choose to not think about those things. And to hear a professional be like, actually, no, she can't. Right now in my current state, where I have a medication that works for me, where I have a therapist I can check in with after doing therapy for years to get me to a good place. Yes, I can choose to not think about things because I have normal brain chemistry now. It's amazing. People experience what it's like to have a mental illness. I don't think it's possible for people to really understand. Because if you have a normal functioning brain, how do you think like a non-functioning brain? You can't. you know, like mental illness doesn't make any sense to you if you don't have a mental illness. So getting that diagnosis and starting on medicine was a really big turning point. Now, medicine alone wasn't enough for me. Therapy alone wasn't enough for me. Therapy and medicine together got me about 80% of the way, but adding that exercise in is what really, like, I need all three of those things or I'm not a healthy. I think people who don't take antidepressants or anti-anxieties usually don't understand what they do. I know I personally, I mean, I used to kind of see them as like a steroid type thing, like it gave you an unfair advantage, like it could just manufacture happiness or motivation or, you know, and it's like, that's not what they do. They just give you back what you lost to bring you back to a baseline. You know, they just make your brain calm down enough so that you can do the hard work to fix whatever lies it is that you're believing about your situation or yourself or what have you, so that you can work with a therapist to unlearn all of those things or to learn new coping skills. And so I would say, so if your symptoms are affecting your appetite, your sleep, and your ability to like have a conversation, that sounds like there's a medical part to it. You know, like we said earlier, there can be a spiritual part to it. There can be a physical part to it. There can be like a brain chemistry part to it. Yeah.
That's really helpful. Thanks for sharing those things. What we know about mental health is so complex, right? We know that there's a genetic and a physical kind of component to it. We know that some of it has to do with your life stressors, your environment, what's going on at the time. There's definitely like spiritual, it's like that whole bio, psycho, social, spiritual kind of thing. Like there are all these things that go into it, and we can like tend to over or underemphasize different parts of it.
Yes, that my doctor told me there are some people that are too quick to jump to medicine, and there are people who are too reluctant. So that's who I'm talking to, the people who are too reluctant to try medication. If you're like me and you are literally, like you said, your reference is distorted. If you are constantly depressed or constantly anxious, you don't really have a grasp of how deep in the hole you are until you're out of the hole.
Yeah.
Like after my first child was born, so I started taking medication right before I got pregnant with my first child. And I did, so like I had my mental breakdown in January, started meds at the beginning of February, and then I added a second one in March, and then I got pregnant in May. And so pregnant, I was right at the beginning of kind of leveling out a little bit. At that point, I was having these like glimpses where it felt like the fog would lift and then come back down, or like a curtain would open and then it would close again, where I was getting these glimpses of what feeling normal could be like. And around August, when I was about halfway through my pregnancy, I was like, oh, this is what normal is.
People out there that haven't ever struggled, like they don't know what it's like to have a mental health issue. What, I guess, like, what would you say to them just about mental health?
I guess first I would acknowledge why it's hard for them to understand mental health. Like I said earlier, if your brain works normally, it's really hard to imagine it not working normally. Because when it's kind of the counterbalance of what we were saying before, when your frame of reference is normal, it's hard to venture into not normal. Like, think stigma is like going away because, you know, people like you are giving people a platform to talk about things. And so there's going to be a little bit of a barrier from a generational aspect of, you know, you just talk about those things. Well, no, yes, we do. We do talk about them. It's important to talk about them. So I guess advice would be to just listen to people and just keep in mind that just because you don't struggle doesn't mean somebody else doesn't. It's an important place where we need empathy, not sympathy. No one can help fix the problems if you aren't putting the work in.
Exactly.
But at the same time, we don't need extra people putting barriers up.
Yes.
You know, like I said, my decision to not try medication was influenced by things I'd heard other people say about it.
Thanks so much for talking. Yeah. And I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you're a super busy mom, but I do want to thank you for sharing your story because I think it's so important. And yeah, my real goal with this is just getting more information out there about mental health and giving people a platform to share their stories because the more we talk about it, hopefully the less stigma that there will be around these issues. Yeah.
That'd be a good day.
That would be such a good day. Oh, well, it's good to see you, Michelle. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Good night.
Okay, we'll be in touch. Bye.